what happens when this palette becomes a texture flat Chenille bracelet with a dramatic button clasp? Let's find out. Today I'm creating a seed bead bracelet using the flat Chenille stitch, embellished with layered seed and button beads, and finished with a cut button closure. I'll even show you how to taper the stitch to create a perfect loop for the clasp. Before we get started, here's a look at the Apricot Ash Collection, available in my Etsy shop. Information is in the description below. Bracelet, the first things that you're going to need out are going to be your 8/0s and your 11/0s. This is going to be the base of the bracelet itself. You're also going to need a comfortable length of thread, and I'm using the gray to start off with. Now in the kit you'll have both the gray and the green, so just decide which one that you want. I ended up giving both colors just in case we do run out of thread, depending on how big your bracelet needs to be. So if you're not familiar with the chenille stitch, because we'll start off with that, this is what it's going to look like with the two gray colors. So that is option number 1. You also have an option number 2 of the brown color of 11/0s. So that is the other option. Don't pay any attention to this because that was just me trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So we're first going to show you how to do this stitch itself. Then we'll come back and I'll show you how to add the button on this side and then finish out this part, which is going to be the beginning of our chenille stitch. Then we'll come back and we'll do our little taper off to here, off to this side with the loop, and then after that we'll go down the center and add our embellishments. So it's not going to look like this, I promise. Alright, so to start off the chenille stitch, we are going to be picking up a series of beads, and we need 4 groupings of these beads. I'm picking up 4 groups of an 8, 11, and an 8. So 4 of those groups, and then once you get the 4 groups on, that is what you should have on your needle. So you have group number 1, and 2, 3, and 4. So that is the first thing that you need to start with. Go ahead and pull these down to the end of the thread. Just leave a comfortable amount to hold on to, because we'll come back and tie this off later. And make sure all your beads are sitting there. Alright, so this is probably the part that's going to be the most difficult to start with the flat chenille. What we need to do is we need to go back similar to in a fashion as if we were doing peyote stitch. So I'm picking up an 11/0 and an 8/0. I'm going to skip that 8/0 that last 8/0 that we added in the first round, and I'm going to go through the 11/0 as well as every single bead all the way to the beginning of the stop thread, or the starter thread. When you pull that down, Captain's saying hi to everybody. When you pull that down, that is what it's supposed to look like. So it's like a little peyote stitch down there at the bottom. Now we need to be beading back towards this direction. So whenever we add this little picot stitch around the edge here, we need to make sure that our picot stitch is around the edge down here. I have a feeling Casper's getting walked and Captain's not, and he's getting mad. Alright, so I'm going to pick up another 11/0 and then an 8/0. So we're going to skip this first 8/0 again, we're going to go through that 11-0 and just the 11-0 this time. So just like that. Let's see if I can bring it up a little bit. Make it a little bit closer to the camera so you can see what I'm doing. And then when you pull that, it should look, both ends should look the same, similar now. So both ends have that little picot sitting out. So now what we need to do is add beads in between our 11-0s. So we're going to go through just the 11-0s. So when we're beading away from ourselves, the majority of the time we're going to go through the 11-0s. When we're beading towards ourselves, the majority of the time we're going to go through just the 8-0s. So with that being the case, we're going to pick up 2 8-0s. We're coming out of that first 11-0. We're going to skip the 2 8-0s and go through the next 11-0. So this is similar to peyote stitch again. We're just picking up a different amount of beads. So that's what that looks like. So now we're picking up a second set of 8-0s. Go through that next 11-0. And then that's what the second portion looks like once it focuses. There we go. And then pick up another set of 8-0s. Then we're going to go through that last 11-0. Sometime or another, there we go. Alright, so we're going through that last 11-0. So I'm coming out of this 11-0 right here. This one. So now we need to get ourselves set up to where we're going back down the bracelet again. So we're going to be beading towards ourselves. To do that, we need to be going in this direction out of these beads right here. So to do that, we're going to go through the bead on the left, so the 8-0 that's on the left from the current 11-0. We're going to go ahead and go through the 11-0, that's the little picot around the edge, just like that. And then now we can proceed down through the 8-0 here on the right hand side. And that gets us set up for our next little portion of the stitch. So to continue on this stitch, we're going to be putting 11-0s in between the groups of 2 that we added. So we added 2 beads right here. So we're going to add an 11-0 right here. So we're currently coming out of that first 8-0, so we need to go through that second one that's sitting there. Then we're going to pick up an 11-0, and we're going to go through the next 2 8-0s, just like that. Then we're going to pick up another 11-0, go through the next 2 8s, pick up your last 11-0, and then go through the last 2 8s. So that is the next row done. So now this next row we're going to be adding 8-0s again. Fixing that just a little bit. There we go. That's the way it's supposed to look. So now we're going to be going beading away from ourselves, so we're going to be adding 8-0s again. So we need to be going through just the 11-0s. So on this we're going to pick up 2 8-0s again. And we're going to go straight through that last 11-0 that we just added. Come on camera, focus. There we go. So we're going through that last 11-0 that we just added. Pick up 2 8s, go through the next 11-0. Pick up 2 8s, go through the next 11-0. Now you notice that we're at the end, but there's no more 11-0s to go through. So what do we do with this one? We're still going to pick up two 8-0s, because we still need to add 2 8-0s sitting here. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the right, we're going to go downwards, so you're kind of doing a little bit different here. And we're going to bead towards ourselves just for a second through those 2 8-ohs that are on the right hand side. So go ahead and go through both of those. Now we need to get ourselves set up to where we're going to go this way with our beading again. So we're going to go to the left to that first, that is not your left, I think I said right earlier also. Anyways, it's these beads over here that we just went down. And then we're going to go to the right 1 bead. So this is the first of the 2 8-ohs that we just added. So we're coming out in between those 2 8-ohs that we just added. So this is where the thread is at. We're going to go ahead and pick up an 11-oh. And we're going to add that 11-oh in between those 2 8-ohs. So it's still in the same fashion like we did on this little portion right here. We're just doing it in a different step. So there's our 11-oh added. Now we need to make this little turn to go back down again. So if you remembered up here at the very beginning, we picked up an 11-oh and an 8-oh, and then we went back through that 11-oh that was sitting there. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the 11-oh, and when you pull that down, you now have that little picot stitch sitting there on the side. So let's get ourselves set up for the next 11-oh that we need to add, because now we're going to be adding 11s because we're beading towards ourselves. So we're going to go through the next 2 8s right there, and then we're going to add an 11-oh, and then we're going to bead through the next 2 8s again. Come on, focus. There we go. So we're going through the next 2 8s, and then add your 11-oh there. Pick up an 11, go through the next 2 8s, pick up an 11, and go through that last 8 that is on this row. So you're putting all your 11-ohs in between the 2 8-ohs that we added in the previous stitch. So now we need to get set up to where we're beading backwards this direction again, so it's going to be similar to what we did over here on the first again. So we're going to pick up an 11 and an 8, and then we're going to go back through that last 11-oh that we added in the stitch. So this part is the easy part. This is the part, whoops, this is the part that we just pick up 2 11-ohs, or 2 8-ohs, and we go through each one of the 11-ohs. So 2 8s, go through the next 11, 2 8s, next 11, 2 8s, next 11, and don't forget we have to do our little turnaround. We have to do our little turnaround so that way we're going back down this one. So we're going to go through the 8, then we're going to go through the 11, goodness, and then the 8 that is just to the left of that 11-oh. So I'm kind of going this direction. Then I'm going to turn around through the 11-oh, that's the picot around the edge. And then I'm going to go through the first 2 8-ohs that are on the right down here, and that gets you set up to do the next row. So that's all you have to do. That is pretty much flat chenille stitch, and then you just keep on beading until you get to the length that you need. I'm going to go ahead and finish this row out because this is actually the row that you want to end on when you get to the end of your bracelet. So imagine this being really, really long like I had shown you just a minute ago. Then you want to make sure that you have these beads here on the edge. So if you're doing the sets of 4 like I am, then make sure you have the 3 11-oh seed beads sitting there, and then that's where we're going to be able to do our little triangle decrease. So how far do you go? How long do you need to make your bracelet? So like I showed you earlier, this is the bracelet that I'm making. I did enough rows to where when you wrap it around your wrist, it almost touches. You can do actually touching if you like. If you wanted a little bit tighter or a little bit looser of a bracelet, perfectly fine to do. I like to wear my bracelets just a little bit tighter So I'm doing almost touching, just like that. So you can do it this length, you can add another 2 rows if you want to, that's perfectly fine as well. But this is the end of the bracelet. This is the beading portion. So this is my working thread right here. So that's where that is at. And then this is the starter thread over here. So see how this still looks like the starter portion that we had just done. So that is how much that you need to do. I ended up doing, I think this is about, I'll measure it because I don't remember how long it is. Mine is, on a flat stitch, it is almost 6.5 inches long. So it's almost 6.5 inches. So that's about as much that I'm going to be beading. Just depends on what your comfort level is. There again is how many rows that you need to do. You should still have plenty of beads in there to be able to make this a lot longer if you prefer to have a looser bracelet, or if you have a slightly larger wrist, as my wrist is a little bit smaller than most people. So go ahead and get this portion done and then meet me back and I'll show you how to get the button on first, and then we'll continue on. Once you get your length beaded to the length that you want, then I would suggest to go ahead and take your needle off your working thread. Go ahead and cut off about, I'd say maybe about another foot of thread, just a small amount of thread. Even if you have some scrap thread, this would be a good thing to use for scrap thread. Put your needle on that, because we're going to come back over here to the beginning and add our button first before we do our loop over here. I always suggest to use your button first, or whenever you're using buttons, put that on first, so that way if you make a loop, then your loop, you know for sure that your loop is going to go around your button. So first thing what we're going to do is I'm going to pick up one of my 8/0s. I'm going to use it as a stop bead. So I'm going to go all the way down to the end of my thread. There again, just leave a small amount to be able to hold on to. And then go back through your 8/0 at least one more time. You can go through twice if you want, but I'm just going to go through once. Then that way, that'll help keep the beads from falling off. Now this is actually the back side of the bracelet. How do I know that this is the back side of the bracelet? Because when I'm beading, I always hold on to my starter thread down here like this. So this is going to be the front side of the bracelet. So flip it around to where your starter thread is now facing away from you, and then that's the back side. Why do I say that? Because we're going to add our stop bead to the back of the bracelet so we can come back and tie it off back here in the back. Now I'm going to add the button at this bead right here. So notice this is that first picot stitch, there's the second one, and then there's the third one. So it's in between the second and third picot stitch, and it's that third seed bead in a row. So there's the first one, the second one, and the third one. So I'm going through that second seed bead, so the middle one right there. Now the only difference is that I'm going to go through the seed bead, but poke it through to where the needle's coming out the front now. Just like that. Then that will put your stop bead on the back of your bracelet, so you can come back here at the end and put the needle on this part over here and then tie that off. Just makes it a heck of a lot easier. Alright, so we're going to add our cut button. So we're going to pick up one of the 11/0s. Go ahead and go up through the bottom of the cut button. Pick up another 11/0. I'm going to do an 11, 8, and 11. You can put however many beads that you want to on the top. You can put 3 11s if you want to, whatever you want to do. I'm going to do an 11, 8, and 11 though. Then I'm going to go down the other hole of the cut button. And then I'm going to put another 11/0 on, and then I'm going to round through the 11/0 that is on the bracelet itself that we first came out of. So here's the working thread right here, and it's going towards me through that seed bead. So I'm going to go ahead and go back through that same seed bead, working in the same direction. Make sure I'm not going to make a knot with my thread though. And then that gets your cut button on, just like that. So that's what it looks like on the side. And then there's what it looks like in the top. So we're going to go back through these beads at least one more time. Now it's going to be a little difficult to see So I'm going to try to make it to where it is somewhat easy right here to see what I'm doing. But all I'm doing is just going through all the seed beads and the cut button at least one more time. I'm going to try to go through two more times, excuse me. So a total of 3 passes of thread through everything. The only issue is that sometimes it's really hard to be able to see what I'm doing, because one reason is that I'm so close to the camera, and 2, the beads are so close to each other. It's really hard to show you exactly what I'm doing here. But every time I go through these beads, I'm just giving it a slight little tug, so that way hopefully it's not too loose. Now if you get up here to the top and you can't get through those 3 beads or however many beads that you decide to use on the top of the cut button, after you go through a couple of passes, you can always just skip them. Just go up the cut button, skip the beads, and go back down the other side, because the thread will end up behind the beads anyway and you won't see it. So it's just an option if you need it. Alright, so that is 3 times through the button and the beads that are attached to the bracelet. So I'm going to go back through the 11-0 that's sitting underneath everything that we started off in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and finish off this portion of the bracelet to make it look like what we finished off over here, that portion. So I'm going to weave myself through these beads until I get to the outer edge over here. So we're going to go through an 8-0 that's sitting there. I'm going to go through an 11-0 that's just to the left. Kind of just working on a diagonal. Go through the next 8-0 that's sitting there. Go ahead and pull this tight. Then I'm going to go through the next 11-0. And we want to make sure that we're going in this direction when we get down here to the bottom. So now I'm sitting next to these 8-0s, so I'm going to go ahead and go through the 2 8-0s that are on the left over here. Then I'm going to go through the picot 11-0 that's sitting along the edge. And then now I'm set up to where I can go up the 2 8-0s here off to the left. I'm going to flip this into my hand, so hopefully I don't mess anybody up doing that. But then now this will look similar to what we've been beading this whole time. So now you're coming out of that second 8-0 there, so now we just add an 11-0. We're going to add our 3 11-0s on the side, go down the next 2 8s, pick up another 11-0, go down the next 2 8s, and then pick up your third 11-0 and go through the last 2 8s that are on this side. And then that gets both sides of your bracelet to look the same. So now all we need to do is we need to go back through and we need to tie off our working thread here. We need to tie off our starter thread that we started with over here, and we need to tie off our thread with the stop bead on it from the button and everything. So go ahead and tie those 3 pieces off. Keep this one here. Don't tie this one off yet because this is our working thread. After this, after I get everything tied off, I'll come back and I'll show you how to do the decrease of the chenille stitch to make our loop for our button. Alright, once you get your bracelet, or your button on your bracelet, then it should look something similar to this. So looking pretty cute at the moment. So let's do our little taper down here on the other side. So to do the taper, what we're going to end up doing is, on a normal stitch, we would put 8-0s in between each one of these, excuse me, each one of these 11-0s right here. Well, we're going to skip the first one and the last one. So what we need to be doing is coming out of this 11-0 here, so that way we can put the 8-0s in between these two. So we just have to kind of think, okay, our thread needle's coming out down here at the bottom of this 8-0, so we need to get ourselves wrapped back around so we're coming out in this direction through that 11-0. So to do that, I'm going to go through the 11-0, that's the picot, to the left. I'm going to go through the 8-0, that's just to the left of that one, and just the 8-0. Then I'm going to go up through the 11-0, that's to its right, right there. And then I'm going to go through the 8-0, that is to its right, and then go ahead and proceed through the 11-0 that's sitting there. So we just basically did a very large loop back around to get ourselves to where we need to be at. There we go. And then now we can add our 2 8s. We're coming out of that first 11-0, add the 2 8s, go through the second one, and then add 2 more 8s and go through the third 11-0 there. So now we're going to add our 11-0s in between the 2 8s that we just added. So we need to be coming out of this 8-0 right here. So to do that, we can do it in a couple of different ways. If you want to, you can just go ahead and go straight into that 8-0 right now if you'd like. Or if you don't want to do it that way, you can, let's see, you can go up through here. So go up through the 8 that is on the left. And then I'm going to, because if you go straight into the 8 that's on the right, then it would leave a little bit of a thread path there. So if you don't want that there, then this is how you can do it. Then we're going to go down the 8 that is to the left of that one. So see how I was coming out of this one? I'm going in this direction, now I'm going in that direction. And then this thread will be covered up by the 11-0, so you're not going to see that thread. I'm going to go down the 8 that is below it. So I'm on the same row right now. And then I'm going to go in the opposite direction, still going to the right now, through the 8 that is on that side. So I'm sitting just to the left of the 8 that we need to be coming out of, and we're going to do just that. Go through that 8-0 that we need to be coming out of on the right hand side. So that gets your thread all wrapped around without having any thread paths shown. Then we're going to pick up an 11-0, go through the 2 8s that are sitting there, pick up the next 11-0, and then go through that last 8. We've got 3 more beads to add, 2 more 8s and another 11-0 before we do our loop. So now we need to get ourselves wrapped back around again so where we're coming out of this 11-0 right here so we can add our 2 8s in between. So I'm going to go down the 11-0 here. I'm going to go ahead and go down the 8-0 sitting next to it. Let's see, what's the easiest route? Okay, we can go up the 8-0 sitting to the left of that current one. Then we're going to go above that current 8-0. So going through that one now. Then I'm going to go back to the right again, through the 8-0 to the right. And then I'm going to proceed to the right again and go through the 8-0 and go ahead and come out the 11-0 that we need to be coming out of. And then that's where we add our 2 last of our 8-0s and go through the next 11. Now we have to get ourselves turned back around so we can add that last 11-0 in between the 2 8s that we just did. So I'm going to go through the 8-0 that's up here at the top, or above it to the left. We're going to go down the 8-0 to the left of that one, down the 8-0 that's below the current 8-0, so in the same row, just below. Then we're going to go up the 8-0 to the right of that one, right there, and then down the 8-0 to the right that we need to be coming out of. And then this is where we add our last 11-0. One more turnaround and then we add our loop. So we need to get to be coming out of this 8-0. It doesn't matter if you're going away from you, towards you, it doesn't matter which way. But we need to be coming out of that one. So all we're going to do is just follow these 4 8-0s that are sitting here. So we're going to go to the left of the 8-0 to the left of where we're currently coming out of. Whoops. And then go through the 8-0 that's above it. Right there. Sorry, my camera's still shaking a little bit. Go to the 8-0 and go ahead and go through the 11-0 that is on the right hand side of where you're currently coming out of. And then this is where we're going to add our loop. Now my first sample that I did, this one, I ended up adding an extra 29 beads to go around this one itself. So we're going to try that first. So I already have the 29 beads sitting over here, so you don't have to listen to me count out 29. So we're going to add all of these on, and then I'll show you how I measure it to make sure it's going to work correctly. Because you always want to do a double check before you get too far into your design, because if your loop is too small or too big, then it can impact your design itself at the end. So go ahead and go back through the 11-0 that's down here to make yourself a loop, and then we're going to test it. So hold on to your working thread with a little bit of tightness so you can test it and see if it's going to work. You want to make sure that this loop goes around the button. It still stays taut, so it's tight around the button, but not so tight that you can't get it around it. So I'm still holding on to the working thread. You can see it sitting here on my left finger, and you can see that the loop is going around it just about the way that you need it to happen. So that way it's not too loose, but not too tight. So now we're going to go through these beads 2 more times. And after each time that we go through this loop, we're going to double check it again. Because once you add more thread to your loop itself, it tightens up the loop. And sometimes it can get too tight. And then where you thought you were okay with just 1 or 2 thread paths through these beads, all of a sudden it's really, really tight and you can't get your loop around your button. See how it just loosened up like that? That's why we go through this at least 2 paths. You can do it just 2 if you want to. I like to try to do 3 if I can. Now when you're using 15-0s, sometimes that's really hard to do. Kind of depends on the needle size that you're using. But you'll always want to make sure that you have at least 2 thread paths through there. So I'm going to check it again because I got the 2 paths in there, and we're still sitting pretty good. So if you are to put a certain amount of beads on your loop and you go around your button, and then all of a sudden you see gaps in between the beads, then that means that you probably don't have as much beads or enough beads on your loop. You probably need to add more. If you're going around your button and it's just really hard, really tight, and it's really tough to get around the button, then you probably need to add a couple extra beads. So I hope I said that in the correct way. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to go back through this one more time. I'm not going to tie off this thread yet because we're going to go down the bracelet and add our little embellishment. So go ahead and go through your loops a couple of times and then meet me back, and then we'll do that embellishment down the center of the bracelet. Alright, so now it's time to do some embellishments down the center of the bracelet. Now if you like your bracelet just like this, then you could just tie it off and have just a nice Chenille looking bracelet. So you can do that too, if you just use the seed beads and not do the embellishments if you wish. So whichever you prefer. Now I have my sample bracelet out to help kind of guide you to see where we're going to be working with these embellishments. I'm going to be using the picot beads, so that row of the picot stitch, to help me determine where I'm going to be putting the embellishment in the center. So I'm going to be using these little portions right here, so this row, and then I'm going to be using this middle what looks to be like a right angle weave unit. It almost looks like a double right angle weave because you have your 4 seed beads here and then you have the 4 beads around it. So those are going to be the 4 beads that we're going to be using. We're going to be going through the middle 2 seed beads here, and then we're also going to be using those 4 8-ohs that are around that. So that's, hopefully that makes it a little bit more clear as to know where we're going to go. So I have a pile of my button beads, I have 11 ohs in my alternate color. I'm going to go ahead and use the alternate color, and then I've got some of the 15 ohs that kind of play off some of the color in the button beads. So we're currently coming out of part of our loop, so this is that extra bead there at the very tip. I want to be coming out of either this bead right here or this bead right here, so it doesn't matter, but this is the row that we're going to start on, is that first one. So what I'm going to do is go down the 8-oh and the 11-oh that's sitting right next to it, and then, hold on, I'm going to go through the 8-oh also. So we're going to go down the 8-oh, the 11-oh, and the 8-oh just to the left, so I'm going at a diagonal right now. Go down those beads. Then I'm going to go up the 8-oh that's to the left of where we're currently coming out of. And my stomach is growling like crazy. It's getting close to dinner time. And then we're going to go up the 11-oh that's sitting to the left of it where we're currently coming out of. And then that's where we want to be. This is where we're going to add our little button beads. So we're going to pick up one of our 15s, a button bead. You know what, I'm going to do 2 15s because I used 11 ohs on my sample. So I'm going to do 2 15s, a button bead, and then 2 15s. So there's that. If you're not familiar with the button bead, it is actually like a triangle type bead in that this is the top portion. So the top looks like just a round little portion, but it's kind of like a cone, and then your hole goes through the tip of the cone down there at the bottom. So that's what a button bead is, if you're not familiar with them. So we're coming out of that 11-oh here. We want to go through this 11-oh up here, and just go in whichever direction you want to. And then that puts your button bead hanging out just like that. So now we're going to add some beads around this to help keep that button bead from flopping around too much. So we're coming out of that 11-oh right here. I'm going to go ahead and go to the right, and I'm going to go through the 8-oh that's to the right and going towards me. So there's that bead that we're going through. On these parts, I'm going to add the 11-ohs. I'm first going to start off with 3. I'm going to start off with 3 11-ohs. I'm going to go back through that same 8-oh that we're going through right now. So we're just rounding it out. Make sure not to go around anything. So that puts your 3 beads right there. Now I'm going to pick up 5 11-ohs. And I just realized I thought I wanted to do something different. That's fine. I'll still do it this way. Okay, so we're going to pick up 5 11-ohs. And the reason why I was thinking that I was going to add some more of my 15s in. So you can absolutely do that too if you want to. So add the 5 11-ohs. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that your 3 11-ohs stay on the inside and that your 5s are around the edge itself, right like that. Now we're going to move to the next 8-oh. Now this is hard to see because this is where I was saying this is those 4 8-ohs that go around in that right angle or that raw unit look. So we're going to go down the next 8-oh, which is right here. So that's the second one, and then we're going to do the same thing with the seed beads. We're going to do a set of 3. You know what? I'll add the 15s on the next one. I'll do an every other maybe and see what that looks like. Well, of course this thing's really far away from me. It's hard for me to see. Okay. Got through it. So there's those 3. Add your 5. And then go through that same 8-oh. If you have to, you can always loosen this guy up a little bit because you just came through there, and then that way you can see where your 8-oh's at and that you need to go through, which is right there. And then just make sure to give it a little bit of a tug to make sure everything is tight on there. And then there's your beads on that side. So now we're going to go through, and this 8/0, it's right here. So now we're on the left hand side of the bead, of the button bead. We're going to add our 3 and our 5 on this side. And then we'll add the last of the beads. Oh, and my neighbor's getting their tree cut down, I think. And so you might be hearing some sounds from that. And then go through this last bead, which is right here, which is the 8/0 right there. So this is the 4th one that is around that button bead. And see how it's kind of almost looking like a flower in a way? Just looks like a big bunch of beads, but it kind of resembles a flower. At least that's what I was going for, was kind of that flower look. So we're going to go back through there with the 3, and then add the 5, and then I'll show you where to put the next one, and then I'll let you go on. And then, like I said, I'll play around with the beads and see if I want to add some of the 15s, which you absolutely could if you want. I think I was going through the wrong bead just then. But you can absolutely add extra beads if you want, extra colors. If you have other beads, other button beads at home that you want to use, this is the time that you can use all the extra beads and stuff. So see how it looks? It kind of resembles a flower. It's getting there at least. We might, you know, if you wanted to, you can add some extra beads around the edge right here and down here. It's completely up to you. So with that being as big as it is, you're definitely going to have to skip some. So doing it every single one of these, you're going to run into a lot of overlap. So what I would suggest would be do one here, you know, line it up with your picots, skip at least one, and then do one here. I may actually skip 2 and then do one, and then skip 2, and so on. When I was counting it earlier, I did just skip 1, and it ended up being perfect to where this last one right here, right next to the button, ended up being perfect to where that one would be skipped. So I know this might be a pain in the butt for some people, but if we do 1 and then skip 2, 1, 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 skip 2, that ends up being the same thing too. So if you do the 1 and then you skip 2 of these picot stitches and then you do your next little flower right here, then that would be spaced out enough to where it would have a nice little space in between your last flower and your button. That's what you're kind of looking for, so that way you have, your loop has some room to be able to go around the button itself. Alright, so let me get you set up to do that next one, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and skip 2, and then I'm going to get ourselves over here. So we're currently coming out of that 8/0. That is extremely hard to see right now. In fact, it's hard for me to figure out where it's at also. Yeah, okay, it's right there. Alright, so we're going to go through this 8/0. I don't know if I was on screen just then. But we're going to go through that 8/0. That is up to, that's above it and to the left. Then I'm going to go down the 8/0. That is to the left of that one. So now we're getting close to that second picot row, that second row stitch. Then I'm going to go up the 8/0, that's to the left of that, just like that. And then I'm going to go down the 8/0 to the left of this one. So I'm just zigzagging through. And then we want to be, and then up and down. It'll be perfect. Ah, okay. So we're going down that 8/0, then we're going to go up the 8/0 to the left of where we're at, which is now on the other side of the second picot stitch that we're going to be skipping. And then down the 8/0 that's to the left of that. And then that gets us set up to being right next to the 11-0 that we need to be at, which is this one. So we're going to go down that 11-0. So we're going downwards this time, adding everything in the same direction, or the same fashion, just a different direction. So now you pick up your 2 15s, a button bead, and 2 15s. And then you're coming out of this 11-0 and then go down this 11-0. Before I make everything really, really tight, these are the 2 11-0s that we're going through. And then these are the 4, get that out of the way. And then these are the 4 8-0s that we're going to use right here. So these 4 guys right here. And then that's all you do to add your little floral embellishments. So go ahead and get done with that part and then tie off. And then after that, you will have a completed bracelet. So I'll come back and I'll show you what it looks like. And that's my Apricot Ash Bracelet, the February Creative Color Challenge winner, inspired by Palette 212. I love how the flat chenille texture and the tapered clasp detail really bring this color story to life. The full Apricot Ash collection is now available in my Etsy shop, so be sure to check the link below. And stay tuned, the next Creative Color Challenge is already underway, and I can't wait to see where the colors take us next.